Herzlich willkommen alle in Deutschland. Welcome to all of you. We're so glad to be here. Both the Quebecois and Canadian delegations are proud to present the initiatives of 4 of our participants. These initiatives are all collaborations between organizations and ensembles, and of course, maintaining that vital link to our audiences. Within the 4 projects, we have 1 Canadian institution, the National Arts Centre, as well as 3 independent business organizations who are also longtime participants in Jazzahead, Effendi Records, Femme Group, and Judith Humanik Productions. These 4 are wonderful examples of how Canada's jazz scene has been so proactive during this pandemic and how they've been able to reinvent themselves and adapt to this new context in which we all evolve. Let's go and meet them. Hi, folks. I'm here with Heather Gibson of the National Arts Centre. Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'd rather see you in person, of course, but there you go. That's where we are. Heather, tell me a little bit about the program that you have called Canada Performs. What is that exactly?
Sure. So Canada Performs started on the 19th of March last year. So what happened was Facebook called us and said, we've been reading in the news that artists are having a hard time, touring musicians, and was there anything that they could do? And so I came up with this program on their first investment of $100,000. That quickly grew to $700,000.
This is, who do you know at Facebook that gets you that kind of, they called you. Everybody calls them, but that's amazing. Yeah, so how'd it go?
Yeah, it was a unique position to be in. So they called us, and from that, then, of course, the RBC, Royal Bank, came on, and Sirius XM came on. We had some foundations also that joined on. And in the end, we ended up at $1.2 million, of which the first $700,000 was given out in an emergency relief fund. So 696 shows in performing arts across the country.
That's amazing. So essentially you're making more money during this pandemic than beforehand. I'm just kidding. But that's amazing that it got going so quickly and was so efficient. So as I understand it, you present artists in all disciplines.
Yes.
Who are the Canadian jazz artists that you do represent, and tell us about that program?
Well, so there was, out of the 696 performances, about 300 of them were music. And of those, we had about what I would consider 60 jazz artists. Of course, there's more that straight ahead jazz.
Sure.
So we had people like Jane Bonnet, Gord Gradina, Elizabeth Shepard, but we also had some that sort of move a little bit between jazz and world, like Amanda Martinez, Leila Bialy. So there was a pretty robust list of Canadian jazz artists that were a part of the program. It was all by application, that artists just basically saying that they'd like to do this. We got about 6,500 applications and from across the country in all disciplines. Most of it was in music. Right. And so it was quite a process to narrow down to make sure that we were representing artists of all the different disciplines and from different genres of music. The interesting thing about Canada Performs looking back is that before the pandemic, musicians weren't using live streaming in this way. They might have been using it as a marketing tool, but they weren't really using it as a dissemination tool. And in fact, live streaming was a concern for Facebook and other social media platforms because it was getting picked up and used for really nasty things.
Sure.
And so they were starting to develop a lot of security around live streaming. And when they came to us and we brought this program, they were really excited because they thought that maybe this is what they'd always dreamed live streaming could be.
Sure.
That it could in not just in the arts but in other things, it could be a way of sharing and disseminating. And so now looking back, it's like, of course we did live streaming. That was an easy thing. But on the 14th of March, when we started talking about this, it wasn't a normal thing to consider, and we didn't really know if artists were going to take to it. Right. And find it as their stage. So the musicians were they were the first ones in. They were the ones who really said, this is a way I can perform. I can get my music across. I can do a show for 45 minutes. But jazz musicians, they were totally there. There was a little bit of like, okay, well, how's the sound? How's the lighting? Those kind of very reasonable questions, figuring out some of those pieces. And then, and then they were on board and continue to be. We're still doing shows with jazz artists. Right. With Jazzahead, we have a couple coming up at the end of the month.
Right. Well, it sounds like something very, very positive came out of this terrible situation. What was the reaction, I'm curious, of audiences to your initiative?
Well, I think early on, the audience was very generous. Like these were people, the musicians were doing these shows from their homes, right? I mean, this was right at full lockdown. So there was a lot of the leaning in, turning the camera on. It was not a very polished experience, right? There's sort of a thing of, is this thing on, going on?
At the same time,
So
maybe sort of an intimate look into
yeah,
somebody's home.
yeah.
It's kind of like, because you'll see them up on stage with all these polished performances and stuff. But I imagine that people kind of enjoyed that. But in any case, go on. Yeah.
They did, and I think that the one thing that we really learned is that chat feature. We're still doing live streaming at the National Arts Centre now, and that chat feature was really important. So early on, the audience was talking to the artist. We're finding now at the shows that the audience is talking to each other. So we'll see, and it's like, hey, Linda, is that you? It's like Linda from North Battleford or something. And, so there's a lot of connection going on and engagement, which is what makes it different than going and watching this on television. There's a lot of that connection that people are looking for. And I think that the live streaming has done that. And it's been really important for us as we've moved on and kind of been examining this whole platform, that seems to be the discerning factor, that this isn't a broadcast. This isn't a make it polished and edited and everything is like you do for television or even some other medium.
Right.
The thing about, even for internet, of putting on YouTube, this isn't the same. Live streaming is very much about what can you see if you were going to this show. What would that interaction, how close could we come to that? So a lot of, we don't have any strange camera shots. There's no shots from the drum kit out to the audience. It's, it's kind of what would you see and how would you experience as an audience member? And that seems to be working. How
did the artists react to this whole initiative? Did they get right into it pretty quickly? It sounds like they did.
I think that they did. Some of them, obviously, it's the same as any kind of stage, this stage and technology. Some artists, this is for them. Other artists, it doesn't work for them. So fine. We see that in all forms of art. And really, we've tried. I've really led with the idea that the artist should lead this. And so we're seeing now some really interesting things come on technology-wise. Some of them have gotten really good at lighting.
Sure.
Some of them have really kitted out and have all kinds of sound. There's been a lot of evolution very quickly. I think that if anything, the pandemic just sped this up, this whole process.
And of course, the technology is all there. It's certainly much more affordable than it would have been, say, 20 years ago. And I'm wondering if jazz in particular might be sort of an art form that would lend itself particularly well to this kind of an arrangement, because, it's not like a big symphony concert where you've got, 70 people on stage or something. It's really, a jazz concert is always kind of an intimate thing. And so I wonder if for the jazz performers, this was a special, sort of almost a natural transition type of thing.
I think so, but the challenge early on in those first 3 months is that, so much of jazz is living in improvisation. Sure. It's also living not just as solo artists. And so that was hard in the early days, right? We had a lot of artists who wanted to perform with, their trio, or in trying to find ways in the pandemic and the rules that we've all been with.
I guess a lot of lonely drummers.
Well, and even, it just a lot of that improvised part became a solo endeavor rather than that kind of play you normally get with jazz, that back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. But so some artists it works, and other artists, it was less their stage.
Right. And what about the art sector itself? How did the art sector adapt to this initiative? How did they like it?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's, at least in music, it was picked up pretty quickly. I think people are trying to figure out what's going to happen when we go back. If that in Canada, let's just say it's Thanksgiving in Canada.
Right.
When we're back to fully on stage with full capacity, where does live streaming exist? I certainly hope that it exists in the land of discovery. Mm-hmm. We've been able to, for instance, host more artists from the North than we've ever been able to at the National Arts Centre. We're introducing artists from the West who normally perform from Vancouver to LA that don't usually come Vancouver to Toronto. So there's a lot of that going on that we're seeing more and more discovery in the market, in the Canadian marketplace. I think that the sector is seeing that benefit. They're starting to see that maybe there's a different opportunity here for developing market.
Certainly.
Artists.
I mean, it sounds very much like the two could very well coexist in the sense that for the artist will see that it's a win-win situation too. Yes, they can get into the halls and into the the live performance areas with their whole audiences, but they can reach whole new audiences perhaps with this new initiative, and perhaps the two can coexist. Then, what do you think?
I think so, and I think we've also have this sort of parallel stream going of ticketed live streams, and we're selling a tremendous amount of tickets to ticketed live streams. And I think that probably it's because Canada Performs gave us that foundation.
Sure.
We saw tremendous growth, like in the over 1,000% growth in our platforms, in our website platforms, and our social media platforms for both engagement and viewership. And that's translated now to, I think it's the core reason why we have ticketed platforms. We're seeing artists who are selling between 70 and 210% more than when they're in person.
Wow.
So for an artist, for instance, who sells 1,000 tickets at the NAC, now they're selling closer to 2,000. So there's also that piece, which is not then about discovery. That's about those artists who are already career musicians.
You may have a hard time getting them back into the hall. They're going to be like, you know what? I'm doing this from
Well,
home now.
We I don't know that it was so much from home, but we've definitely heard from artists having conversation about changing the touring model.
Sure.
Particularly those artists who are out there doing 160 dates a year and saying,
crazy.
Is there
Sure.
any other opportunities that maybe I could stay home? We're talking to a lot of artists who are just saying, you know what, I'm doing producing now, and I'm going to be very selective about my live performance. Who knows where that will go? I mean, we can't predict.
I'm just wondering, Heather, what's the future of this program?
Well, the emergency relief fund is finished, so that's something that we wrapped up in about a year ago now. Not more than that, about 1st of July. It rolled into another 2 years of Canada Performs, and there's various projects that we've been doing. One, for instance, is working with organizations across the country, organizations and festivals, trying to explore live streaming with them, venues, helping them also explore live streaming. And I think that you'll see something really interesting coming from the NAC and Canada Performs in 2022 that's going to be looking at the evolution of live streaming and how does it fit into our on-stage performances and touring.
No, exactly. But it sounds wonderful. It's been so great talking with you, Heather. Thank you so much. Good luck for the future. It sounds like it's really going to be exciting. And congratulations for the wonderful things that you've done so far and getting in on the game so early. I don't know who you know at Facebook, but it sounds like you've got a guardian angel up there. And also all the best and hope to see you in person next time, perhaps in Germany. Who knows? So we're here with Alain Bédard of Effendi Records, and looking forward to talking with you, Alain, about the initiative that you have called Jazz en Rafale. So in English, that would be a gust of jazz. Tell us about Jazz en Rafale.
Jazz en Rafale is the jazz festival born in 2001 to promote a local jazz musician in quiet time of the years in March at the end of the winter time.
Okay.
We produce 20 or between 20 and 25 concert by edition in downtown Montreal, in concert hall and jazz club. And we receive international jazz musicians and organize musical meeting with local musician. We did 18 edition, and we took a break for my health for 2 years. But I come back this year to present Jazz en Rafale live cam.
So you picked
activity inside the pandemic.
You picked quite a year to come back, Alain. You didn't think maybe it'd be a good idea to sit this one out too, and you're like, no, we're coming back. I think that's a wonderful initiative. What has it been like coming back in this situation?
Well, I come back because in the pandemic it was impossible to play. It was impossible to reach any audience, and the Jazz en Rafale live cam project was set up to produce web virtual concert and webcast of 9 live concert, and also this concert so it's on demand until May 1st, and we organize a virtual concert at the Studio Piccolo.
I think you've got a fantastic name for it anyway, because it's self-explanatory almost, live cam. It's such a great idea. What's coming up in your lineup, Alain? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the lineup is the artists, jazz artists from Montreal, and it's the first one is Manuel Tierra. It's a Brazilian piano player. Benjamin Deschamps. And also Ologist Quartet is my project. Yannick Rieu with a Generation Quartet. Yannick is one of the best saxophone player in Canada. He's a winner of the last Opus Award from Conseil québécois de la musique.
Great.
For the best album of the years. Yves Léveillé, Quartet. One of the great composer pianists in Quebec. Also Cuba Séguin, Jacques Cuba Séguin, trumpet player. Of the last Adisc and Junior Award for the best album in Canada in 2020, and Jazz Lab Orchestra. Large format collective. It's one of the most active in Canada. Franco Borasser. It's one of the representative best player in Canada in jazz solo. We released l'impact du silence.
Right.
And the last one is the Félix Trucy with Supernova, four great jazz player from Montreal: Félix Trucy, Jean de Rome, Pierre Tanguay, Normand Guilbeault.
I bet you that I'm thinking that these musicians must have all been just itching to get back on stage and perform, and it's wonderful that you can combine record launches in four of these cases as well. That sounds fantastic. What is your artistic vision, Alain?
We want to organize the project, the new project of the guy, the different musicians.
Right.
it was a great opportunity to release their albums, you know.
Right.
And also we another artistic vision is to work with active group he plays on the international scenes.
Sure.
In recent years.
Uh-huh. How did it work out? Like, so what were the results like? Did you have good attendance and stuff like that?
For the moment, the series is not finished yet.
Right.
And we realized to organize something like that is require a lot of resource and effort.
Sure.
And many team. It was, for me, it was the first time I work especially with the webcast team and the video team.
Sure.
And wow, it's a big job.
I'm wondering, Alain, what has it been like to organize this festival in these times? You know, you've done 18 festivals in normal times, and then all of a sudden we're hit with this. What were the challenges for you?
Oof. It's a big challenge because it was the first time for me to organize something. It's very different to organize a normal concert because normal concert is on the small period, and now it was on the 4 months, and we organized 2 or 3 concerts by month, and we did to have a collaborator to organize something, and we have many FND coordinate the project, but set up with collaboration with many team, and it's a big job. And also it's very expensive to organize something, but I'm very happy to receive special grant to organize something.
Great. In any case, it sounds like a fantastic thing that you've been doing, and keep up the great work, and we look forward to seeing these concerts. And I do think you should integrate something there where you get to go and meet the artists backstage when they're having a beer or two. But it sounds great, Alain. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. So I'm here with Heidi Fleming of Femme Group. Welcome, Heidi. I understand you just said you've been doing this for 35 years. I can't believe that. That's fantastic. You started when you were 12, I take it, or something.
Yes, exactly. Wink.
So I bet you've never seen anything like this pandemic, but it sounds like you were able to adapt your promotion on a turn of a dime, very quickly, and centered around one performer in particular, Franco Borasser, during this pandemic. How did you go about this? Tell me about it.
So, well, over the past few years, we had been paying a bit of attention to social media and to video and stuff like that, and we've always been producing records and videos, but not to the degree. Our main goal was always touring and live performance. But then when this all happened, we had to kind of kick into that strategy, and so I did hire somebody to do who specialized in social media, right. And then Francois was coming up with an album for April for this month, and so we had to think of a new strategy because we couldn't do anything in person. So, in fact, his son, Mathieu, had studied filmmaking and videography and sound engineering.
Oh, great.
So he had access to him because, of course, this was super deep lockdown.
Sure.
And so we started with a video of the making of and your compositional and your process, your creative process.
My name is Franco Borasser. I'm a jazz pianist and composer. I'm here to talk about my new CD that will be for piano solo. The inspiration is from the wide range of possibility we can find in different styles of music. There's some influence from contemporary music, traditional jazz, from romantic abstraction. Every experience in life can be an inspiration for music, not just music in itself, but life in general.
And then his other son makes art, and so we actually, because it's solo piano and it's very emotive and a lot of feeling, and we just thought, okay, we could illustrate some of this music with art.
Wonderful.
And so we had him animate first of all, some of my husband's paintings, and then we had him animate his own paintings. So that was like 2 other videos we were able to do. And then we actually got a real an animator who had worked with people like Maurice Chouinard and the Grand Ballet, and we had him animate a piece.
How did you come up with these ideas? Like, did you do
Well-
group brainstorms or something, or how did you? It sounds fantastic.
Well, at the beginning, you know, it was like, are you okay to have, very much at the beginning,
Right.
would you want to do a live stream concert from your home? And he wasn't really comfortable with that right at the beginning. So then we thought of other ways to put it on the Facebook platform. Again, it was on Francois's Facebook page.
Right.
That we aired some of these videos, and, you know, coming up the album, et cetera. But eventually it was a little less severe, and we were able to do concerts like here in Diezons with limited audience members, you know, and they would be hybrid performances that were taped.
Right.
And that were also diffused to the general
You've been living in
public.
Quebec a long time. Diffusé.
I know.
Yes.
Mix
Which were
up my
diffused
French.
like perfume.
I
but
mix up my French
We're
and my
broadcast,
English.
if you will. Yes.
Broadcast,
yes.
exactly.
But I think they usually anywhere else they love to hear the little sort of Frenchicism that we throw into our.
Well,
But it sounds like how did this work? How did it go over? Did you get some media attention for it? Or?
So little by little, you know, that we increase, well, with the social media specialists and trying to be much more focused and proactive, and we
Right.
started increasing the number of people that were on the page. We also said, you know, we're going to do an Instagram page, and there's an example of it. I think we have a slide, you know, and
Sure.
so within a few weeks, Francois had all kinds of Instagram people following him. And
So you're developing new audiences as well through this.
we're
Yeah.
developing, and the Instagram are a lot younger. I seem to see that a lot more female musicians are following, and so on and so forth. And of course, he taught for so many years
Right.
that he has an enormous number of students that follow him from all over.
Right.
So yeah.
And not just that, I suppose, but also from his followers from all the concerts that he's been doing. And what was the reaction of the presenters, for example, to these initiatives?
Well, some presenters embraced it and said, you know, come and do concerts. For instance, Quebec City, we did a concert there with his quartet, and it was basically, again, a hybrid experience, and they had brought in teams to film, and and then other presenters, you know, were kind of, well, when the lockdown happened, they didn't have the expertise to kind of turn on a dime. So
Sure.
it was a mix of both.
I imagine there was quite a challenge also to as I understand from what we were speaking earlier, that this is the first time that Francois has done just a solo piano
Absolutely.
album. So
Right.
that must have been something complete.
So the
what was that like?
timing actually turned out to be great because,
Perfect. Yeah.
you know,
Can't invite the other
you
three guys
couldn't-
over.
it doesn't work on Zoom. There's no way to make a group work yet. You know, not a very good way. So
Right.
solo was perfect, and then you know he was actually living part of the time in France, which is where he recorded the album
Right.
at Studio La Buissonne. So you know we would try and organize photo shoots with him while he was here, and then, you know, try to instruct people over there what we wanted them to do, because everything was being done à la distance also, you know.
Right. Right. What would you say you've learned from this experience?
We learned that, you know, we reached out to people on the internet that we would not have been able to, like we reached out to Ethan Iverson, for instance, and I'm a great fan of his, and, you know, he was very happy to participate in, like, writing liner notes for us, and has now become a fan and an Instagram follower. And, of course, we're fans, of course.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of think a little bit outside of the box, and not, this music could also fit into a kind of another category other than jazz. You know, this could also be somewhat in the classical contemporary world. It could be presented in a venue that had a very wide description of what their offerings are. So it travels well, and it could be easily filmed and sent via internet. And so who knows what's in the cards for the future.
Anything that you would have done differently, Heidi?
I would have
done more.
insisted that Francois do the National Arts Center thing from his home for Heather, but at the time he was a little scared.
Maybe he'll be more open to it now. He'll see and he'll listen to what
Well,
Heather had to
because
say too.
you have to have the team photographing you and filming you, and that has to be, and at that point we hadn't come up with his son doing it yet. So that I kind of regret I didn't push that one a little bit.
Well, it sounds like
sooner.
you had some wonderful flashes and some great ideas, and it's so special that it was such a family project. And we look forward to seeing more of this and hearing Francois' album, which is coming out
It's called L'Impact du Silence, so the impact of silence.
Yes.
And the silences are almost as important as the actual music on there, So we all knew that we could hear silence for the first time.
My wife often tells me silence is golden. Would you please stop talking? So we'll stop it there. Thank you so much, Heidi. All the best with this, and wonderful to have chatted with you.
Thank you. Merci.
We're here with Judith Humanik of Judith Humanik Productions. Thank you so much for being with us today, Judith. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Now, as I understand it, you've developed over the years international collaborations far before the pandemic. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, thanks so much, Chris. The artists that I work with are in Toronto and in New York also. And I've developed some wonderful collaborations over the years, and pretty much most of it due to my participation in Jazzahead. So, I guess starting back as around 2013, I began collaborations with some wonderful people in Egypt. I've worked with the festival programmers and presenters there in Greece, in France, in the UK, Ronnie Scott's and Pizza Express, and also in Spain. And this latest venture was with India, actually.
Wow, these sound like some wonderful destinations that we'd all, I think, love to travel to yesterday, but we can't. How have you been able to, Judith, maintain these relationships through this pandemic?
Well, I use the tools that are available. Zoom, do a lot of Zoom, of course, email and messaging. WhatsApp is another tool that I use. It seems WhatsApp works very well for messaging people in the Middle East and also in India. So I use a variety of tools, and I've built some wonderful relationships over the years. Very much a personal effort, so that we know each other well. They know they can trust my judgment. I work with wonderful musicians. And so these have become really long-term relationships in a business sense, too.
Sure. And how did you, you're describing that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about the presenters that you work with. Have they developed sort of a special interest in presenting, if you will, Canadian artists?
Well, it's very interesting because initially these artists were not known to them, but once they hear them, there's absolutely no hesitation. The trips to India involved the Kirk Mcdonald Generations Quartet. Kirk's a marvelous saxophonist composer from Toronto, and this was a group that we took just before COVID happened, actually.
Well, how do you see, touring, because you do a lot of touring with your artists, it sounds like. How do you see this evolving now for Canadian artists in the coming years? Any changes in the coming years, do you think?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that once things normalize in whatever way they're going to, that we'll be continuing this work, and people certainly want to keep doing this work with me and my artists. I think that we'll be able to move ahead in the same way, but we're definitely supplementing with the online side of presenting too. I think that has to be part of it in the future.
Into the future as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Interesting. It's funny. I was reading up about some of the wonderful things that you are doing with your artists, and I don't know, just had no idea that India, for example, would be such a rich country for jazz. It was a total surprise for me. What a wonderful thing. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, India is a relatively small market in a large country. However, the people there are very much connected. The key presenters all know each other, they support each other and cooperate. And I actually met with Sanjeev Bhargava, who's the founder and director of SAHAR India, which is a major arts festival presenter. He wanted the Kirk Mcdonald Generations group for his festival in 2019, and the festival had to be shifted so that it was moved into end of February and early March 2020. So that's how this whole thing came about.
If you could tell us a little bit about the tour of India that you did with the Kirk Mcdonald Quartet, perhaps, and how did that go?
Oh, it went extremely well. It took a full year to put the tour together. However, once we had our main anchor date, which was the Jaipur Jazz and Blues Festival, which SAHAR was presenting. I worked with some contacts that I was able to get through a student who was living in Toronto at the time from India, attending Humber College. He connected me with a circuit of influential jazz people in India. I made calls and we spoke and looked at the possibilities. And once they heard the artists, I sent samples. They were just absolutely excited to have the group. And in this particular group, another feature was that Kirk's daughter, Virginia McDonald, who is a wonderful rising star clarinetist, was part of the group. And the SAHAR Festival for Jaipur wanted to feature a young Canadian jazz musician who's female. So the whole thing came together quite beautifully, and I was able to connect with some music schools there, several jazz clubs, and then eventually to two major performing arts centers in Mumbai. In fact, the tour ended on March the 8th of 2020 with the concert at the National Center for the Performing Arts in Mumbai. That was recorded, and that same day I actually met with the artistic director of the Royal Opera House in Mumbai. His name is Asad Lalji, and so I've stayed in touch with them over the year, and we've been able to do some wonderful things virtually since the artists have been there in person.
Wonderful. And perhaps I could ask you a question about results. How has it turned out then, how have the results been?
The results have been wonderful. Normally, we would not have been having an opportunity to build future audience in India, but because of COVID, it's interesting that both of these major venues decided to really upscale their online programming, and both contacted me and invited my artists to submit some video material. So we've done several broadcasts since returning to Canada of both the Kirk Mcdonald's group and also wonderful trumpet player composer from Winnipeg, Gardner, who just released a beautiful big band album in July. So we've been able to carry on their work, and mostly it was because these artists had some really wonderful video material already ready. Mm-hmm. Kirk had some wonderful videos from recording sessions with the great iconic pianist Harold Mayburn, who passed away last year, from recording the Generations album, and Derek had some beautiful video footage from the recording of his big band album last January.
My name is Derek Gardner. I am from Chicago, Illinois. I am a jazz musician, jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, educator. And this is the premiere recording of the Big Dig Band.
So we had the footage ready to go, and these organizations were very excited to broadcast the work of my artists. So we've had the ongoing relationship, and we are continuing to work together and definitely plan to have more live performances with them. They want the artists to come and perform again, and to bring new artists from my roster.
Wonderful. Well, this sounds just fantastic, Judith. Thanks so much for having spoken with us today, and we wish you continued and great success for the future.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Great to see you. Thank you all so much for watching today. We're glad that you could have been with us. We hope that we've been able to pique your interest and curiosity around some of our Canadian organizations and artists. You can find other information on the project and all Canadian participants at Jazzahead via the website quebecjazz.com, as well as on the Quebec and Canada Jazz virtual stand at Jazzahead. We very much look forward to seeing you all, hopefully live and not on a screen. Next year, Canada will be the country of honor in Germany. We're very much looking forward to this, and we're honored. We want to thank you from here in Montreal at Dièse 11 and Gary, our host, and look forward to seeing you next year. So liebe Grüße aus Montreal. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.